Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. Today's live stream is obviously not going to be as hardware focused as the last couple of ones. Tomorrow and the day after that, I expect us to be getting reviews for the new iPads, the new M4 MacBook Air, and the new Mac Studio, given that they're all coming out next Wednesday, or the coming Wednesday. So today we actually have a tiny bit of drama, if you want to call it that. Honestly, it's a little bit something that I had kind of expected to happen, given what we've been hearing from the likes of Mark Gurman. And Mark Gurman has been still, despite some of our criticism, a decent source in the past, and he will most likely continue to be a decent source for the next coming months and years and whatever. However, we now have official confirmation from Apple, which of course makes it much more worthwhile covering. And today, yes, we are talking about Apple delaying certain Apple Intelligence Siri features. So it's not Apple Intelligence overall that is getting scrapped or anything like that. It's not that Siri will never be smarter. I mean, technically Siri has already gotten some upgrades, but this is basically through Daring Fireball, Apple coming out and saying that expect more Siri features in the coming year, which to me means 2026. They did not say early 26 or anything like that, or if we're going to see something later this year or as part of Dub. They just said in the coming year, which honestly is the only thing of this that I don't like. Not that I expected them to have a very concrete new release date, but given it's something that we had expected for April, it's a little bit weird to not have it like confirmed for at worst like exactly a year from now, right? In the coming year, it could mean something as bad as like November 2026. Now, I don't think that is going to be happening. I also think that Apple has decent reasons to do this. And I myself do not care too much about chatbot-like functionality, but we'll get into the exact details of what's being delayed, what it means for potentially other Apple products that are powered or will supposedly be powered by Apple Intelligence, and of course, what it means for Apple's current marketing campaign, which does include a lot of references to Apple Intelligence in general, but also specifically to a newer, more powerful, smarter, and more helpful Siri. I mean, we can actually start with that and see how Apple advertises that. But regardless, we'll also get to how the community is reacting, which to me is honestly quite interesting because I see a lot of hypocrisy of people who were like, oh, I don't care about anything AI, and like, oh, Apple should have never launched Apple Intelligence if it's not that good. And now that we are seeing the delay, which just means Apple is doing what you were asking them to do, now you're also not happy. It's a similar thing to what happened with the new base level iPad with the A16 processor, where a lot of people were saying like, no, don't make devices more expensive because of Apple Intelligence. And the same people, by the way, who have been saying like, oh, iPadOS doesn't even need the power of an M1 chip, right? Might as well just pack in an A series chip and an older A series chip, given how like under-delivering iPadOS is. And now Apple is like, okay, here's an A16 iPad, $350 for 128 gigabytes of storage. Knock yourself out. If you really don't care about the other niceties of the iPad Air and especially the iPad Pro, if you don't care about Apple Intelligence, here's an iPad for you. And I feel like the tech community who were asking for like a cheaper, better value product, who was talking about like, oh, the iPads should be like sub $500 devices, right? Since they cannot replace your laptop supposedly. But now they're the ones who are saying like, oh no, not like this, which isn't to say that Apple is without blame here. And we'll also cover that. I mean, specifically Apple's marketing on their website has been quite egregious in mentioning features for Siri and stuff like that. It should be noted though that Apple's website is not entirely just for marketing, it's also for information. So Apple telling you about features that will come out at some point is not too different from when Apple shows a new iOS version that dubbed up in June, but it only releases in September, right? It's not a lie for Apple to say, expect these features in the future. And sometimes features get delayed too. So I'll try to incorporate as much nuance here as possible before we get fully started. Oh, I see I haven't actually downloaded the video I wanted to. A small shout out for you to do all the YouTube jazz, as we call it around here. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Comment. You guys know I love interacting with a lively live chat, hearing your opinions, your agreements, your disagreements, debating you a little bit sometimes. It can get a little heated from time to time. I already see Angelica joining the chat, wishing everyone a nice Sunday. As do I. Had a nice, relaxing walk through the sun. It's beautiful spring weather right now, so I'm in a really good mood. No, I'm dressed for now, but I'm also in a very good mood. And Max Maximus, a member for 8 months. Jesus, how time flies. Leaving a small, what is kind of a super chat. It's for members. I think people are overhyping this, to be honest. And to be honest, I kind of agree with that largely. Again, I will cover what some in the community are saying. I actually kind of hope to get some hypocrisy from Drew from Tylosive Tech, who has been like really negative on Apple Intelligence, and with that he I just wondered if he was gonna like go 180 and say like, oh, delaying Apple Intelligence is the worst thing ever. But let's actually get into the details, because this is what we are trying to do here on this channel. It's not about reactionary content, and yes, we do react, but anybody who is coming from the political sphere, you know that reactionary does not mean you're reacting to something simply. It means that you have a very strong preconceived bias. Usually that's when we're talking about right-wing press, but it can technically apply to the left wing. And you are like extremely like super angry about anything that happens because you know somebody is your enemy, you know something is happening that you just don't like, even if you don't know much about it. And this is what we are really trying to avoid here. When we are talking about things, we at least first try to understand them. That does not mean we are not emotional or can react strongly, or it can sometimes even become a little insulting, but we usually try to control ourselves a little bit more, at least in my opinion, than the average YouTube channel in that regard. So let's actually look at the marketing first on Apple's website for how Apple treats a product, for example, like the iPhone 16 Pro. And you can already see here that the starting point is, of course, advertisement for Apple Intelligence. We see the new Siri animation, which I've seen some people say, why even give Siri a new animation if it's not that much better? Siri integrates with stuff like ChatGPT these days. And no, please don't turn on Siri on my iPad. It also gives you new functionality like double tapping the home bar here, and then it brings up type to Siri. So this idea that Apple's voice assistant shouldn't be getting a new user interface unless it's like completely redesigned on the back end is something I profoundly disagree with. Also, Siri behaves a little bit differently when it comes to like what does it cover up on screen, which obviously once Apple is looking to integrate something like on-screen awareness will become much more important. So I'm just trying to say this idea that the Apple Intelligence animation, the new Siri animation is the only thing that is different. It's not true. Also, like in general, that new animation, yes, it is going for the entire screen for Siri, but we do see similar color schemes and like rainbow effects throughout all of Apple Intelligence. So the fact that it shouldn't be happening for Siri is a little bit of a weird suggestion. However, and this is a criticism towards Apple, I do not think that Apple Intelligence should be the first thing they advertise for a new piece of hardware, right? Now, fundamentally, do I think it's bad that they're advertising Apple Intelligence? No, because contrary to public belief, we have stuff like writing tools. Even inside Siri, we have integration with things like ChatGPT and most likely soon Gemini. We have visual intelligence that integrates both with ChatGPT and Google. We have I always forget what it's called. Cleanup in the Photos app, right? There is plenty that is going around. Plus, there is also a general focus on like LLM capabilities with the neural engine. All iPhone 16 models have like 8 gigabytes of RAM at the very least. I'll also get to what that could mean in the future later on. Relay joining the chat. Hello, long-term supporter now at this point. Thank you so much. So yes, I do believe that in a nuanced way, you can criticize Apple for really pushing Apple Intelligence this hard. However, there is a reason why Apple did not suffer some of the recent like stock drops as we have seen from other AI companies, Nvidia, even to a lesser degree Microsoft. And the reason for that is that this marketing is a very, very small part of what Apple does. Even when you look at the iPhone 16e, for example, and you look at all the YouTube ads, kind of like almost like short form videos that Apple is posting for it, they're not really that focused on Apple Intelligence. They're focused on all-day battery life. They're talking about how you, in a cheaper phone, now get a full screen experience, right? Which previously the entry point for that technically was $700. They talk about the power of the A18, not just for Apple Intelligence, but even for running things like AAA games. So I disagree here with what Apple is prioritizing, but I'm also trying to say it's by no means the only thing that Apple is advertising. And I mean right here, right? They're talking about camera control. They're talking about the cameras, 4K 120 video recording. They're talking about a vibrant screen with very slim bezels. They're talking about the power of A18. Yes, they're mentioning unrivaled intelligence with it, but that is what everyone is mentioning these days with every single processor. I mean, AMD called their freaking entire lineup Ryzen AI these days. So Apple is very, very much on the better side of history here. Then they're talking about stuff like gaming and battery life. So it's not like Apple completely forgot to talk about the actual piece of hardware. I mean, even here, just focusing on the design, on the titanium body, is very, very much something that Apple cares about. But of course, once we get to Apple Intelligence, right, all those features I mentioned, writing tools, summaries for notes and stuff like that, priority messages in mail, express yourself visually, that's Image Playground, that's Genmoji, that's Cleanup. But then a new era for Siri. And here I actually agree that I don't think these things need to be removed entirely, but I do believe these things need a lot of context added right here to tell you that certain stuff for Siri is coming later. Now, step-by-step instructions for things like, I think that's actually inside Siri. I have not played around with that too much, like just system-level controls being explained better inside Siri. But awareness of your personal context, that is what was supposed to happen next month. So we were supposed to get simultaneously the international rollout of Apple Intelligence and Siri with iOS 18.4. Well, we are, of course, still getting Apple Intelligence rolled out internationally. It feels like people are forgetting this, like Apple is adding like 7-8 languages and stuff like that. So it's not like they've forgotten Apple Intelligence, but Siri in of itself, and especially features like personal context, on-screen awareness, all of that is being delayed. And it's being delayed to the coming year. All the other stuff, communicating with Siri even more naturally, it depends. Obviously, I believe Apple has changed some things on the back end for Siri, but given that you cannot really ask Siri to do much more complicated things, you have very little opportunity to actually test it out. Because if all the things you do with Siri are still things like setting alarms, reminders, timers, right? All those things that Siri is actually really, really good at, you might not actually hit any real boundaries when it comes to rich language understanding. So this is just something that I wanted to cover, because I do acknowledge that some of Apple's marketing can be misleading, but it's not as terrible as some people make it out to be. It's one slide out of, I believe, 9 here, right? So just making sure we all actually understand what we are talking about. And now that we understand that Apple is delaying some Siri stuff, let's actually deal with their exact wording on this topic. In their interview, kind of, with Daring Fireball, they are saying the following: Siri helps our users find what they need and get things done quickly. And in just the past 6 months, we've made Siri more conversational. So this does mean that the backend has been improved. Introduced new features like Type to Siri and product knowledge. So that's 2 of the 3 things that we've talked about on the website. And added an integration with ChatGPT. It's also very likely that by iOS 19, we will see Apple open that up, by the way, and also introduce optional support for things like Google Gemini or other large language models. Really saying, you ordered the 16 Pro Max, well, congratulations to you. I think it's a good time of year to still buy one. I think we are still far enough away from the 17 series, but now at a time where you're finally getting really good discounts. Like, I hope you got at least like 10-15% off. Probably more like 15% now that we're almost half a year removed. And I hope you will have fun with it. We've also been working on a more personalized Siri, giving it more awareness of your personal context, as well as the ability to take action for you within and across your apps. It's going to take us longer than we thought to deliver on these features, and we anticipate rolling them out in the coming year. So Apple is specifically talking about personal context, on-screen awareness, a deeper app integration here. According to Reuters, the Apple Intelligent Siri features have been delayed until 2026. I don't understand why we needed that clarification. I know that in the coming year is like commonly misunderstood, right? I think if you're in the very beginning of a year, you can say in the coming year, and it actually still means in this year. But we are already in March. In the coming year, to me, means next year. Because like that's just how language works. I even looked it up. So I've seen some people say, oh, it will be part of iOS 19. I mean, technically it could also become part of iOS 20, and maybe some of those features roll out before others. So, and maybe some of them could come even a little earlier, maybe like very late this year. We could hit a beta for like personal context, but it takes us like until January of next year to get it officially. And then we hit a beta for an on-screen awareness. Again, this is entirely speculative, but I am wondering why we needed clarification that it's been delayed until 2026, because this is exactly what Apple is saying when they mean in the coming year. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just trying to clarify things. But yeah, personal context. So let's actually deal with those individual features. And thank you here for Mark Rumors, for summarizing them. With personal context, Siri will be able to keep track of emails, messages, files, photos, and more, learning more about you to help you complete tasks and keep track of what you've been sent. This honestly is actually a very ambitious thing, especially given Apple's focus on on-device, like machine learning, and the fact that we would have like Siri running on device on 8 gigs of RAM devices. So show me the files Eric sent me last week. Find the email where Eric mentioned ice skating. It's not that it's really like entirely difficult to do those things. Like technically something like Google Gemini does those things. Not fully, it's a little bit hit or miss, but all of those things currently require running on a server. Now, it can leverage things that are on your device, but preferably you would have them like stored in the cloud, and then it just would reference the same file on your device. So I'm not sure if Apple might be hitting some computational problems here. Maybe the battery consumption for constantly indexing all those files in all those different ways would make your device run slower. Maybe Apple is eyeing to make these kinds of features exclusive to devices with 12 gigs of memory, like the upcoming 17 Pro series. And then in that case, they could also port those features to run on their private cloud compute servers, right? But if they do so, now they need a lot more private cloud compute servers, which right now they simply don't. Like the kind of the most common industry prediction about private cloud compute is that it's most likely expanding with M5 generation, and M5 is launching at the end of 2025. So if Apple plans to have a lot more servers, because a lot of these features might not be actually able to run on all Apple devices offline, maybe at that point Apple is saying, oh, we'll need to roll it out in 2026 because we are only starting to build the servers we need in 2025, right? Again, this is all very speculative on my part, but I'm just trying to say these features do not exist on other devices in the kind of way that Apple is trying to integrate them. Even features like on-screen awareness are basically like screenshots on devices where then your phone like takes the most important data from. It doesn't actually have full contextual understanding of the app underneath. Tipo Master joining the chat saying their AC/DC effort, Apple take on NVIDIA H200 won't scale to 2026 plus. So the other rumor, the true LLM Siri is until 2027 in iOS 20 makes sense. It's fun because you're saying a similar thing to what I said, but yeah, you chatted it before. If AC/DC is behind even then, that's not looking great. Yeah, this to me is honestly like I expect some things to really happen in 2026. In fact, and this is something that I have said notoriously on this channel, I've said iOS 18 is the very inception, the very beginning of Apple Intelligence. And I've predicted that it will take us until iOS 20 to have a full comprehensive feature set and the vision of what Apple Intelligence should actually be used for, right? Do Apple customers have a need for a chatbot like Siri that basically becomes its own search engine? I don't think Apple will invest in that. Like, look at Grok at Twitter, for example. Like, yeah, they're pushing increasingly new versions of it, but it's still like, I saw it like comment under a post from ChatGPT yesterday, and they had like an abstract image. And people, for one, Twitter is completely bot infested. Every second tweet is just people asking Grok for their opinion. And never, ever will I believe that regular people under every freaking tweet have the need to ask Grok for context. But let's completely ignore that, right? But Grok, under the same post, responded that, oh, this is based on this like Russian artist who is very abstract. And on a super basic context, it mentioned the same reference painting, but in the two different posts, it gave different numbers, different years for when that painting came out. I think it actually came out 1915, and it said 1915 once, but then on the other post, it said like 1921 or something like that, right? And Apple does not want to deal with that shit. Why should Apple create completely unmonetizable search engine competitors at this point? Because don't forget, Apple would be entering this market as like not number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 at this point. They would be entering as like number 8. Not only do we have OpenAI and ChatGPT, but we have like 5 different versions of ChatGPT. We have 4.0, we have 4.5, we have all those turbo subvariants, we have ChatGPT 5 supposedly around the corner. We have Claude and Gemini, and Microsoft, despite their integration with ChatGPT, still builds their own their own stuff. And then, of course, shit like Grok comes around. And then China, of course, with things like DeepSeek and whatever Baidu is doing, and Alibaba, right? Like, why in seven hells, to use the Game of Thrones terms I sometimes throw around on this channel, why would Apple join that market? Apple doesn't build a Google search engine competitor. Apple doesn't build a YouTube competitor. Like, yeah, from time to time, Apple will enter a market like the way they entered like the music subscription market after Spotify. But they legit made Apple Music into a different service, right? They focused on higher audio quality. They, of course, focused on the integration with their services. All this extra chatbot stuff is something that Apple can easily bolt on the way they're now doing with ChatGPT inside Siri. I've already asked ChatGPT a few questions inside Siri. I actually got one premium month for $20. It's not fantastic, to be honest. It makes mistakes that the search engine does not do. You guys can follow me on Twitter. From time to time, I just post that stuff. But like, the reason why I mention all of this is because what Apple is trying to do, not only the deep integration, but then also trying to make it run on device and make it very privacy and security focused. Nothing like that exists. So Apple delaying it is not a sign that they're completely behind the others. If they wanted to, they could take $80 billion, built out 50 server farms, invested like overpaid NVIDIA like 10-15% for their H200 GPUs, and have like one of the best AI models in a few months. But why would they do that when everybody else is doing that? When everybody else is burning that kind of money, and most of them don't even have a path to proper monetization? Things like on-screen awareness, that one shouldn't be too difficult, honestly. It depends a little bit how Apple wants to handle it. For example, if somebody texts you an address, for example, you can tell Siri to add it to their contact card. I think that even if Siri ends up internally taking a screenshot and analyzing the text on screen, that should be totally possible with the current LLMs that Apple could like easily develop themselves or license from somebody else. So my assumption is that they simply don't want to like have all those features launching at a different time frame. Deep wrap integration is the thing that, in my opinion, is probably the most complicated to get right. Siri will be able to do more in and across apps, performing actions and completing tasks that are just not possible with the personal assistant right now. We don't have a full picture of what Siri will be capable of, but Apple has provided a few examples of what to expect. For example, moving files from one app to another, editing a photo, and then sending it to someone. So you see, when it comes to just like this one task, like followed up, right? It's like, oh, you have a file, send it to someone. Oh, you have a photo, potentially even like, oh, open up the editing for it or something like that. It also should be possible, but it's also something that Apple has actually promised to integrate deeply with third-party apps, because if anybody of you, of course, know the regulatory pressure that Apple has faced over everything from the App Store to the closed nature of iOS to the USB-C port in the European Union, of course, Apple wants to launch all those features and not have them just run inside Apple's own apps, or at least not for a long period of time, right? If Apple launched like iOS 18.4 and it took like until like iOS 19 to get the full APIs for that, I think that would have been tolerable. But if Apple introduced it now, but like third-party apps only got it a year later, that would have been a regulatory nightmare for them. Rumors suggested that Apple initially planned to introduce these features on iOS 18.4. This is interesting to me because I do not expect them to be integrated in iOS 18.4 at all at this point, but I wonder if Apple could maybe start some kind of internal beta for all of this way earlier than they usually do, right? Maybe in iOS 18.5, they could actually introduce some of those things, but tell you, oh, but they're only launching like 8-9 months from now, with the explanation, but we really want your feedback about how well those features work. So please expect this to be a beta of a beta, right? Basically half an alpha that we are pushing out to you to help us. Tipper Master, I remember an old video of someone asking Jobs about computers only doing one thing at a time we tell them to, and the future where you could just tell it what to do. Do you remember that? I remember a lot. I remember he had like a conversation. Was it in the same conversation where he also talked about like virtual reality and how we have like personalized audio in our ear, but we cannot have personalized video in front ourselves? I don't remember what he said about this. You're saying it had been on his mind a few times that even I can remember, and probably many times more. I wonder what he would have thought of modern AI and how early he would have spotted the trend. That's interesting because Steve, like, contrary to public belief, Steve did jump on a few trends, right? Do I need to mention how bad Mobile Me was in many ways before Apple transitioned to iCloud? Do I need to mention to you Ping, right? That was the iCloud. No, that was the not the iMusic, the iTunes social media network, right? Yeah, iTunes Ping. iTunes Ping, or simply Ping, was a software-based, music-oriented social networking and recommender system and operated by Apple Inc. It was announced in 2010. Apple officially closed the server in 2012. Yeah, like Steve probably talked so much in his life. Even I cannot keep up with all of that. Yeah, but I'll probably look into some of those things. By the way, guys, this is why I do recommend you follow me on Twitter or on Blue Sky, because here on YouTube you cannot send links, but there you could. So whether it's just for my own personal information or you want to send me something that I should react to, right? This is why I recommend you guys follow me, right? Not the stalker-like way, but just follow me. Yeah, but like Steve, this is what I'm trying to say. Like Steve is not immune to jumping upon trends, and he's not immune to giving up on stuff. Like, yeah, we of course eventually got the iPad, but Apple's Newton died, and for years we didn't have an Apple device that supported any kind of stylus. And you might hate early on digital styli as much as Steve did, but there were always other styli. Like there were like more professional things that Apple could have either entered or really deeply partnered with. And even then, when the iPad launched, he still didn't bring it with a stylus, even though at that point the technology definitely existed. Maybe not quite as good as what they eventually launched in 2015 with the A9X iPad Pro, but like Steve was not infallible, right? And I mean that in a good way. He was human. He still got excited by things he saw in the news. He got angry when Apple didn't get something right. Yeah, this idea that like, oh, Apple is jumping on AI in a way that Steve would have never done, or Steve is turning in his grave. And by the way, Tipo Master, I'm not saying you are saying that. This is just general commentary towards the broader tech community. That is such a ridiculous proposition that I honestly cannot even take it seriously. So all of these features, of course, now being delayed to the coming year. What does that mean for other Apple hardware? Because primarily we do focus more on hardware in this channel than we do on software. And we are getting some early tidbits from Mark Gurman, who of course got the initial delay right. That delay turned out to be much more substantial than his initial reporting showed. But kudos to him. He actually held open like the chance in his reporting that Apple might actually significantly delay some things into iOS 19 in 2026. So while we have criticized Mark Gurman a bit in the last couple of videos, I will give him his laurels where they are deserved. And he is saying that now the Homehub, or as we lovingly call it, the HomePad, because it would be a HomePod plus an iPad screen, is supposedly being delayed. Apple has supposedly, now this is going back to Mark Gurman's new reporting, Apple has opened up an internal testing program for the upcoming smart home product, which some refer to as HomePad. So I like referring it to that like that as well. It's actually a fun name, though I doubt it is going to be the final one. It was it was scheduled to debut in March. To be quite honest, this is the thing that I dislike the most about Mark Gurman. It's whenever he brings up like ancient shit about like, oh, Apple initially planned to launch it in March, and like the plan for that was like way over a year old, and Apple delayed it or just decided it would be better as like an end of 2025 product. But now, of course, given that a lot of the features this thing relies on are most likely being delayed, now is the question like, will it be delayed alongside the new Siri capabilities? So it might take us a full year and like up until next March or April to get a full new Siri. Will Apple delay the HomePad until that is until it can actually benefit from that Siri? And with that Siri, also of course it begs the question: is any of the functionality that we are discussing, personal context, on-screen awareness, deep app integration, is any of that so potentially demanding that even if Apple put in an A18 chip and 8 gigabytes of RAM into this product, which of course would make it pretty expensive unless it got delayed so much that at that point A18 is pretty cheap, like, what would Apple do then? Would they have more features on the HomePad, rely on private cloud compute? Because you cannot tell people, oh, it supports the new Siri, but not all of it, right? I think you can kind of do it almost with an iPhone, right? You can at least with the iPhone you can say it. Oh, some of these features on a newer iPhone rely on the cloud. Some of those features on the newest iPhone, they are completely on device. With a HomePod like this, you would basically have to commit to it supporting the new Siri and the new Apple Intelligence for years and years. So what happens once its hardware is not able to deliver on those goals? Because yes, at some point 8 gigs of RAM will not be enough to run simultaneously the operating system, Siri, and of course on iPhones, don't forget, you also have to run like high resolution cameras and even high resolution, high refresh rate displays. So, and of course you might actually turn on a game that can eat up all your memory at one point. So I'm not sure what the actual target of this product is going to be. Will it be more cloud-based? Will it still try to be almost entirely on-device based? Apple never promised that some features will not be private cloud compute based, so I'm not saying this would be a backtracking from them, but it's just an interesting detail. So they are bringing up the delay here. So according to Gurman, at one point the company had hoped to announce this product in March, but because the device, to an extent, relies on the delayed Siri capabilities, it has been postponed as well. We expect this device to end up with like a roughly 7-inch display, a camera, a rechargeable battery. That's something I have never heard of before from like a reputable source. Home OS would technically not be a completely new operating system. It would be a little bit of a port of what we already have on the HomePods. Yeah, this is slightly weird list because like I've never heard that this device would feature like a built-in battery, because at that point it would just be too expensive. Like most people would just expect it to plug in and use it. Even if you wanted to move it around, you would probably only ever move it around inside your home and then connect it to another power outlet. So I am slightly confused by the way they're covering the HomePad. Yeah, okay. So Mac Rumors is just trying to cover the same things. And the last part of Mark Gurman's reporting surrounding this delay is that iOS 19 will focus more on expanding existing Apple Intelligence capabilities rather than introducing brand new ones. This to me is good because the only thing that I could really see happening that is like crazy new for Apple would be making Siri into like a chatbot, and this is something I really don't want to happen. I really don't want Apple's internal resources to go that route. I don't think the actual product would be bad. I just don't think that this is where I want Apple's money and time to be spent. The bad news is that Apple is unlikely to unveil groundbreaking new AI features. This is one thing that like I always try to explain to people. Mark Gurman is a reputable source when it comes to things happening or not. But when it comes to naming things, Mark Gurman is extremely reactionary, right? Like saying iOS 19 is not getting anything groundbreaking. That's his opinion. He is also the guy right now saying that Alexa Plus, which nobody has gotten to test yet, is like the biggest thing ever in AI, in modern AI. So I'm just trying to tell you, take what Mark Gurman says, not necessarily with a pinch of salt when it comes to the actual rumors. Those rumors themselves are not bad. But whenever he gives like his own 2 cents on something, just try to ignore it. He's not that kind of analyst. He's not a big tech expert himself. So I am not trying to diminish what he has to say. But like, yeah, sure. Will whatever is coming in iOS 19 be groundbreaking? Probably not. Will it still potentially be very useful? And will it be potentially super different from what anybody else is able to pull off, especially if Apple manages to integrate things like personal context, on-screen awareness, and deeper app integration into that? Yeah, it will. So this is where Mark Gurman's opinion really doesn't matter too much. Apple reportedly also postponed its plan to deliver more conversational Siri in iOS 19, instead pushing that release to iOS 20. So this is entirely based on what Mark Gurman said, and this comes down to the fact that Mark Gurman does not know if Apple is launching the new Siri in like early 2026 or mid 2026. So this is why he's keeping iOS 20 as a potential almost like further delay. But Apple just said coming year, so whenever it launches in 2026, it won't be a delay to us as consumers. So just trying to clarify that too. But beyond that, this is the delay in question. There is that also the problem is I cannot read the Power On newsletter, so I do have to rely on websites summarizing this. Okay, so anybody who talks about cameras and AirPods is completely already on the wrong side to me, because the cameras that Mark Gurman has talked about are like infrared cameras for 3D like gestures in the air. None of that would integrate well with something like visual intelligence. So to me, like this suggests that Mark Gurman half the time still does not know what he's talking about. He's saying Apple is working on a new version of the AirPods Pro that uses external cameras and AI to understand the outside world and provide information to the user. This to me sounds completely like an internal prototype. Again, Mark Gurman has brought up AirPods with cameras in the past, and then those cameras turned into infrared cameras for 3D gestures. Now he's bringing up normal cameras again. This would be essentially be the smart glasses path, but without actual glasses. Anybody who knows about the battery life of your AirPods, and you know how even like recording your heart rate on the new Powerbeats Pro eats up battery life, this is like, even he's saying like, oh, expect this at the earliest in 2027, and it's like it's a Meta Ray competitor. So yeah, it's bullshit. It's a prototype that Apple has prototypes for almost everything. I promise you, this shit if it's ever happening, it's happening with such a huge technological leap that those devices might not even be branded as AirPods at that point. They might be part of like a smart glasses arrangement or something like it. But I'm just trying to say, whenever it comes to rumors that are that far off, like 2027, guys, at the earliest, this stuff will be subject to change. And yeah, also thank you to 9 to 5 Mac actually saying this, because this suggesting in particular is a bit odd. But given Quo's credibility, it's this is from Minchi Quo. This is not from Mark Gurman. Minchi Quo has also floated the idea. He also mentioned that it's possible that these cameras could enable in-air gesture control. Oh yeah, this is just some older stuff from Minchi Quo. Yeah, this is honestly where we get like reporting on prototypes as if those are anywhere near. Like, do you guys remember the 1,000 no's for every yes ad from Apple? Like the video, like this is the kind of thing that becomes a no, or it's used internally to test other tech. Tippermaster, if it delays the HomePad, I wonder if this is full-on domino effect with the home robotics as well. No, because I don't think robotics depend on like Siri. Like, I think given what robotics were not planned to like release according to the sources we have until like 2029 anyway. So by that point, Apple would have a new version of Siri anyway. And if they didn't, at that point, they would just make a huge acquisition and buy some AI startup with a decent LLM in that regard. And they might just buy a lot more data to feed their own transformer models, because right now Apple is mostly being held back by their unwillingness to collect data from their users. This is what a lot of people don't understand. A lot of the reasons why OpenAI, why ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, and are decent is because they have absolutely no respect for just going through the internet, especially going through the customers on their own platforms, and just feeding that data to a relentless AI. It's not something that Apple does, and it is holding them back, as is their focus on on-device features. So, yeah, the nuance here is crazy. But yeah, AirPods with cameras, I'll believe it when I see it. This is honestly, and it's also something that I've seen now time and time again. I remember people saying at some point, oh, it might actually be AirPods Pro 3 that could get at least like the spatial, I don't know, gestures, whatever you want to call them. But that obviously isn't happening. So now those IR cameras are turning into real cameras, which even like if you look at AirPods, right, the way they are, like how, like look at this form factor. Like, yeah, the AirPods Pro would be a little thicker. Like, what would I have to aim them like this? Like would the camera be here and just facing to the left and right? I mean, it works if you ask me for stuff like IR, right? Like Apple already has that swipe gestures on AirPods Pro, so why not have a sensor in that regard that just faces in that general reaction? But like even part of my cheek is covering up the vision for AirPod, would be covering the vision for those AirPods. It's, unless you expect me to wear them like this at that point, it's so weird. And honestly, this is something where I would actually love to like have more scrutiny by these guys, Minchi Kuo, Mark Gurman, actually talking about how likely is this product even. Have you talked to any actual engineer? Like, are you designing this more of as a prototype? Are you designing this as a concept? Or is this actually an early stage production or testing thing, right? And this is where honestly, like, have to question their sources, because they might be asking like an executive twice removed from the project, and they're like, oh yeah, Apple is testing AirPods with cameras. You're like, cameras? And they're like, yeah, infrared cameras. And now they're telling you it's regular cameras, which to me suggests that Apple probably is prototyping both, right? Maybe they're like, oh, we could have a very basic camera that does like this too, or we can test it with infrared. It's so weird to me how there is no technical nuance from these guys. in that regard. But hey, I did cover now all the things, I believe. If there's something that I missed from Mark Gurman, it might still come out by the end of this video. But again, I'm not paying for the Power Run newsletter. And to the last, I unfortunately have not gotten feedback from Greg if I can react to his video. Hopefully he will be okay with that. I always claim that my content is very, very transformative. I pause a lot. I comment a lot. So hopefully we'll all be fine. His video has been kind of the most negative. I actually didn't watch it too much. Again, I did hope that we might hear something from Drew, from Tylosive Tech on this. But alas, we have not. So let's see why Apple needs to apologize, according to Greg from Greg's Gadgets.
Apple needs to apologize.
Okay, so now I need to make this louder for myself. I think I also need to make it tiny bit louder for you. As always, let me know what the audio and video quality is like for you, if there are any problems, and let's continue.
For how they mishandled Siri. Apple needs to apologize for how they mishandled Siri. They need to apologize for false advertising, and they need to do a better job about how they advertise their features. And everyone that covers Apple needs to do a better job at actually calling them out when they do something wrong, because this is wrong. Now,
yeah, by the way, this ad, I 100% agree with. This ad, by the way, Apple took it down from their website. So this is the same thing that I've mentioned with like talking about a new iOS version starting from June, even though it's coming out in September. If I do believe that Apple truly expected this feature to launch in April, and it's only severe internal issues that might have been ignored for a while, so there might have been some mismanagement. There could be a reason to even let Gianandrea go, who is the current leader of AI development at Apple, because he has gotten some stuff wrong. That's completely undeniable. But this is basically unique. Like, this is the most egregious example.
First, I want you to stay here with me because I have to add some context. I got to walk you through this because I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with the Apple news, but earlier today, Apple gathered a select few members of the press and issued a statement basically amounting to the fact that one of their hallmark Apple Intelligence features, a much improved version of Siri built around Apple Intelligence and basically able to understand personal context, would be delayed until the coming year.
Okay, so
and that is a very roundabout way of
correct.
saying that this new smarter Siri is one that Apple heavily advertised as one of the key hallmark features of the iPhone 16, and it will not be available on iOS 18.
True.
It will not be available until probably iOS 19, and you know when iOS 19 comes out? Well, that won't launch until the iPhone 17 comes out towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of time. You can also add like the M5 iPad Pro to that discussion, M5 MacBook Pros if you want to. It's not like those features will become exclusive to the newer hardware, even though, of course, I have discussed, even in this stream, that maybe Apple is also being held back by 8 gigs of RAM or by the neural engine even on the A18 chip. They might need new hardware, who knows?
Of this year. So a whole year of this feature being advertised and not being readily available on the iPhone.
I mean, it's not a whole year. Apple is already not advertising this feature anymore. So some important nuance. Apple is changing some of their advertising based on that delay.
Story really isn't new. You may remember my own criticism when I reviewed the iPhone 16, and Apple didn't even have basic Apple Intelligence features fully rolled out.
Okay, this I disagreed with. I've always said it's completely fine to launch Apple Intelligence a month after it launches on the iPhone, after the iPhone itself launches. That I absolutely have no problem with. And the reason why I don't, I try to look at it a little bit from like the perspective of the gaming industry, where like delays happen and like a game is supposed to come out in 2024. They might even take like pre-orders or like early investments with stuff like that Sky Citizen game or whatever it's called, and like stuff gets delayed, stuff gets postponed, even though sometimes advertisements will already start. So yes, I do understand that delays suck, but like the fact that the iPhone 16 Pro made you wait for a month for Apple Intelligence. That really was no big deal to me. And then a month later, you got even more features. Image Playground, Genmoji. Now you can argue how good all those features are, but by the end of 2024, you got basically the majority of the features, except for the improved Siri that Apple is now coming out and delaying it officially.
When they shipped that phone, despite the fact that they revamped their website, remodeled their entire store, and put up billboards everywhere saying, "Hello, Apple Intelligence." They marketed those features as being on the iPhone 16, even
I mean, no, okay. Like in every clarifying thing, you knew at that point that it's coming with iOS 18.1, but okay.
though they weren't. And it actually took them months to slowly add these promises.
No, it took them 1 month. It took them 1 month to reach 18.1, like 5 weeks or something like that. And then it took a little bit more for iOS 18.2 with more features. But Apple has never said that all those features are launching day one with one specific smartphone.
And heavily advertise AI features onto these phones. And for the most part, the features they added onto the iPhone, the iPad, the Mac, they work as advertised. These AI features weren't really the ones most people were looking forward to because
Genmoji is my favorite AI feature out of everything that exists. I hate the idea that people wanted Siri more. Where are you taking this from? I hate how in retrospect, the thing that is happening now is always the most negative that could have happened, right? Do you sometimes see that with news and reporting and stuff like that, where we take what we are getting now almost as the worst case scenario? I will be perfectly honest with you. To me, Genmoji delays would have been 1 billion times worse than Siri being delayed. Now, is personal context the most advanced feature of Apple Intelligence? Absolutely. I'm not denying that. But personal context is not even something that I just want to add to Siri. It's something I want system-wide. So I'm just there's a lot of retrospective thinking here. Tipama is saying, imagine the confusion of the 90% of people who don't follow the stuff with those ads. Why is Liana Mormon lying to me about what Siri can do? It's dumber than a worm. Yeah, that's funny. For one, great shout out to Liana Mormon, a fantastic role in Game of Thrones. But of course, she's also Ellie in The Last of Us. Shout out to the second season coming out soon. That ad 100% was bad. Because Apple Intelligence to me is a broad set of different features. It's an amalgamation. And the fact that, the animation, Siri, blah, blah, blah. The animation is part of all Apple Intelligence, by the way. You'll see rainbow effects all over the place. This ad specifically was misleading in my opinion. And Apple deleted specifically that ad. So it's not like they aren't aware of it.
Because out of the initial Apple Intelligence features, the one that most looked impactful, the ones that might actually affect how users use their phone the most, was a smarter Siri that could understand.
I mean, that is so wrong. I don't even use Siri that much on my device. And the things I do with it are still the same things that I've always been able to reliably use it for. Setting timers, reminders, notes, calendar events. Did I say alarms or timers already, right? It's a feature set that I even get on my regular first-gen HomePod. This idea, for one thing that I think people don't understand, Siri's not turning into a chatbot with those things. When you ask Siri about suddenly historical events beyond a date, but you ask it or something ChatGPT level, sort the last 5 big United States wars by their deadliness, right? Technically, with Wolfram Alpha, I think it should be able to do that. But this is a feature that Siri will relegate to ChatGPT. Even if the new Siri with personal context, on-screen awareness, and deep in-app integration comes out and works perfectly, it will not be able to do those chatbot-like things for you. It's not something that Apple is building an infrastructure for. Apple has no plans to monetize it. Apple has some ad some ad business, like for the App Store and like the stock app, which this is something, by the way, that's completely stupid in my opinion. But for Siri, would they place an ad under the result? No, they have no path to running those gigantic servers actually in a way that becomes profitable. So they are not doing this. So I feel like whenever people are like, oh, Siri is dumb, the things that you are probably gonna want Siri to answer, it, for one, it can already answer them thanks to ChatGPT, but those things will not be suddenly answered by Siri itself.
And your personal context.
Yeah,
this is something that Apple could do that not a lot of other third-party AI services like ChatGPT or Grok could do, because your iPhone has so much of your personal data.
I love that he is so online that he mentions Grok before he does Gemini, which is so much more important for the broader industry.
Your messages, your emails, your contacts, your photos, your music. I mean, this thing has our whole lives digitally stored on it, basically, at this point.
Correct.
And I tell you all of this to offer an explanation, just so you know that this is a big feature, a feature that may have even sold a few iPhones.
Nope. I've already tried telling the people that Apple Intelligence is not selling devices. What Apple Intelligence is helping is it prevents Apple from not having something to talk about for the new iPhones. It's a broad feature set. Even right now, writing tools, image playground, Genmoji, even a slightly improved Siri, right? All of those things are still new, and they are also partially features of iOS 18, but they happen to be exclusive to iPhone 15 Pro and up. If Apple were just mentioning those features as iOS 18 features and they ran on like older iPhones, it wouldn't really like be advertisement for the new iPhone. Would it potentially help sell some older iPhones by making them a little bit more exciting than they previously sounded? Maybe, but like I don't think that Siri, that any of these new features are like upselling people on new iPhones.
Based on the promise that this was a reality. In fact,
no, a lot of those is also based that new things will come. That is always the case.
Look at Apple CEO's Tim Cook's own words, where he stated, that market where Apple Intelligence is available.
By the way, correlation does not equal causation, right? It might just be that the English-speaking markets where Apple Intelligence rolled out were more receptive to the iPhone 16 generation in general. Or they were hit with more. One thing that could have happened there is Apple hit those markets with way more advertisements, and even if those ads weren't for Apple Intelligence, they could have still reminded people, oh, there is a new iPhone and it has new features, even disregarding what the exact features are. The thing is how non-reliable old Siri already is. It's not exactly that it can do everything it could do. Sometimes random things regress. Play the typo list and it pays. Really? The problem is those bugs happen everywhere. Like, and I'm trying to say, like, actually making it LLM based will make it more susceptible to weird bugs than having a very clear algorithm behind it. Like, do you remember when Google Gemini came out and it was dumb as rocks and it didn't have all the features of Google Assistant? Because Google Assistant was actually like hand built on algorithms rather than on a broad kind of self-teaching LLM. Like, that still isn't fully solved, by the way. If you run Google Gemini on your Android device, it might sometimes still refuse to do a regular timer or a regular reminder because those things were only retroactively added to Google Gemini. The system level control, that was supposed to be a Google Assistant feature. But Google Gemini started more of as like a chatbot competitor that was supposed to integrate with Google Search. Now Google is trying to combine them into one, and it's still complicated. It gets every word right, and then it's just like, okay, here's the gay rights list now and then. Okay, which is definitely interesting. Yeah, I'm not saying that Siri is perfect, by the way. Like, but I am saying that about literally every voice assistant out there. Like, and don't tell me that it's not true. My cousin only uses Alexa, right? And whenever we are there, we scream shit at her all the time of her not recognizing even like go to this specific radio channel, a radio channel that is integrated into like all the services there, and it still refuses to do so. Or we are asking it to play a specific genre of music and it plays something adjacent to it, and it sometimes even refuses to play the exact song even though it recognized the exact wording correctly. So is Siri better or worse in this regard than Alexa? From my own personal experience, it's better. My HomePod never gets as much stuff wrong as Alexa does for my cousin. Is it the overall experience of everyone on the market? I couldn't tell you.
Have seen stronger year-over-year sales performance for the iPhone 16 family compared to regions where these AI capabilities were not yet available. There you have it. Apple themselves are admitting here that Apple Intelligence features were a key driving...
No, no, you're rephrasing this right now.
force for iPhone 16 sales.
Key driving force of sales is not what Apple said there at all. The increase in sales in those markets that support Apple Intelligence wasn't even that significant. Like a lot of emergence markets, like I believe like Vietnam, outperformed the growth in markets like America.
And that is why this...
What's the name of the guy I had a meeting with a couple of months ago at Cafe Grinnell?
You met Zach Wingate at Cafe Grinnell.
...is a big problem. You see, Apple
this specific ad is the problem. I agree.
Still has these ads.
Why is Liana Mormon lying to me?
It's an ad that has aired on television. It's an ad that's still up on their YouTube page.
No, it's not. It's been removed, by the way. It's been removed almost right away after this.
And these are features that are still listed on Apple.
Nope. These features, this is one thing. These other things are in there.
Apple's webpage for the iPhone 16. And before you say, well, this was before that they knew that this feature was going to be delayed, Apple still used this example of this Apple Intelligence powered Siri on the new M4 Mac Studio webpage, a product they literally just announced a few days ago.
Yeah, those things do not necessarily correlate. Like, don't forget, I do believe that basically everyone at Apple until yesterday also expected these things to launch in April. So the fact that there might have been like just some like, I believe, by the way, I believe the ads for like M4 Max were like finalized late last year. So
I mean, just consider this scenario. A person sees an ad on YouTube about the new smarter Siri and how it works with Apple Intelligence. Then they buy a new iPhone 16. They ask Siri one of these advanced questions and it doesn't get it right. That person has no idea that this feature is even launching later because they just watched an ad. They didn't read the news articles. They didn't read the tiny disclaimer at the bottom of the ad saying that this feature won't be available until sometime this year. No, they just bought the phone because they saw the ad and they tried to use Siri, and it failed. And yes, I am fully aware that these are features that are still promised to come out. They will run in a future software update. So technically, they are still coming to the iPhone 16, but people may have bought a new Apple product expecting these features.
Yeah, but you're pretending like that makes the purchase somehow irrelevant. Like, you realize that iPhone 15 and 16 Pro have plenty of new things to offer to the user than just Apple Intelligence.
Not to work tomorrow, not the next week, not 6 months from now, but today.
No, that I will say is actually wrong. Like, Apple never promised that all of that stuff is running today. That's just not how ads work. We get ads for things that are coming weeks and months from now all the freaking time.
Yes, I know Apple's history. This isn't the first time they've delayed a software feature or even delayed a product. It isn't even the first time they announced something that has never shipped.
I mean, yeah, like, have you looked at any other company? Have you looked at Google's graveyards? Have you looked at Samsung's HomePod competitor with like the 3 legs? Stuff gets announced, stuff gets delayed, stuff gets canceled.
But this time, it's different. We're not talking about a delay of a few months or talking about a product that was announced, but you can never put money down on it and pre-order it. We're talking about a feature that was promised to ship on your new iPhone,
Yeah.
on your new iPad.
And this is the valid criticism, right? You can argue that the delay is too substantial. But then again, Apple Intelligence is more than just Siri. And Apple Intelligence is already on M1 iPads and Macs and newer on A17 and A18 iPhones. So it's not like Siri by itself is the only Apple Intelligence feature.
On your new Mac, running today's software versions, not one's promised somewhere down the road. It is clear to me that Apple messed up, big time, and this could have all been avoided. You see, one of the things I respect about Apple as a company is that they usually aren't pressured to launch new products or features just because someone else is doing it.
I mean, yeah, but shit still happens. You cannot ignore the entirety of the AI hype. Apple already was far more cautious than any of the big tech companies when it comes to stuff like crypto and when it comes to the what was that, like non-fungible tokens, NFTs? Apple did not jump on that at all. They did occasionally in interviews talk about like the potential of those things, but like they didn't invest in them, or they didn't like allow you to monetize them like directly on the system. I mean, some of that stuff exists in third-party apps on the App Store, but like, yeah, like AI is genuinely something that Apple is way more excited for, not just from an investor perspective, but Apple does have engineers who want to work on the latest and greatest craze in technology.
Apple is a company that takes its time to make sure that when they do enter a product category or they add a hardware or software feature, that they get it right and get it right.
I mean, they are delaying it specifically, though, to get it right. That's also part of what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not saying that this excuses everything, but they are not launching Apple Intelligence in the same stage that, like, Google launched Gemini. Do you remember when it drew on, diverse Nazis back in the day? Like, when it originally launched? Like, where was that? Like... Google Gemini diverse. Hopefully that won't get the video demonetized. Here. That was just like a year ago, right? And they tried to turn historical figures like into diverse stuff, or it brought up like the weirdest images and shit like that. Like this is how AI has been launching in the last year, right? Like, and this is why, for example, Image Playground only features very, very hard rules for what you can render at all. It does not let you render photorealistic imagery of people, right? It's clearly trying to control some of those AI mistakes and crazy things. And this is what Apple is also trying to delay with Siri right now. Because right now, no other system goes as deep as Apple is promising, for example, personal context will go. But if it ends up getting shit wrong in that stuff, and that you end up sending work emails that are wrong based on that, you end up writing to the wrong person that you love them. Like, all of that shit is very, very important to get right. So while yes, was Apple a little bit wrong in how much they advertised it early on? Yes. Was Apple a lot wrong with specific advertisement, like the one featuring Liana Mormont? Absolutely. Is Apple now wrong to delay it to actually meet the standard that you usually associate with them? No.
First time. Obviously, it would be impossible to have a 100% track record in this regard. But
True.
For a company like Apple, you do have to respect that when Samsung and others have had years of foldable phone releases, Apple didn't rush out to market with a Me Too product. I got a phone that folds too. No. They didn't do that.
Yeah, and by the way, again, just was what we mentioned with Google. Right? Like, sure, we can argue, oh, that was 6 years ago, but Samsung launched that product. Samsung charged you $2,000 for a product that broke like after 2 days of usage often. Like, is that even close to the same level as like having that Liana Mormont app? And this is not whataboutism. Important context about industry practices is not whataboutism. It's not deflection. It's important to understand that everyone makes mistakes. And I think it's forgivable that even that Samsung made this mistake. But does this mistake exist at a completely different other level than the mistake that Apple did with the advertisement for Apple Intelligence? Absolutely.
And you can't say that about other companies. Apple launched the Vision Pro. What did you see? And that is the example Apple should have followed with Apple Intelligence. You see, we are still in the...
But I mean, Apple has been careful. Like, no, like the only thing that even had like some small controversy with the current Apple Intelligence was notification summaries, right? Where like sometimes it would give you like a weird summary for it, even though of course it would literally take you one tap to actually see the messages and then not have a panic attack or something like that. Now they have changed that. They're labeling it more clearly. They're allowing you to enable or disable that on a per app basis. So they are learning. And they just improved on it further by having priority notifications being managed by Apple Intelligence with the latest iOS 18.4 beta. So, like, yeah, is the delay like somewhat hurtful because some might have expected those features to launch earlier? Sure, but like this happens.
Very early days of the promise of AI features. And even though AI is capable of amazing feats already, it is by no means a mandatory feature that Apple needed to ship this year. Apple was swept into...
Yeah, but the features they actually launched are not bad. Genmoji is fun. Image Playground, except for some of the eyes it does for people, is pretty fun. And for something that runs on device, isn't actually bad, right? It doesn't charge me anything, doesn't serve me ads or anything like that. Writing tools, to me, obviously, writing tools will be more useful in German than they are in English, but they're still useful. By the way, I'm not sure if this is something that Apple has advertised, but like suggestions for next words for in typing in iOS 18 is way better. And also grammar checks, even without enabling Apple Intelligence or like even turning on like the writing tools, it goes back sometimes. I can write like 3-4 sentences, and then it jumps back and shows me, oh, you were missing like a comma here or something like that. It's way better than it used to be in iOS 17, and I assume it's built on some kind of like transformer-based model, maybe one small enough to still run on A16 and stuff like that. So maybe Apple doesn't advertise it as part of Apple Intelligence, but now Apple Intelligence is even better than that by not just being able to correct those things, but rephrase things and summarize things. And I just don't think that those things are bad.
To this AI craze.
Or like they're not bad enough to be entirely delayed because Siri isn't there.
Instead of waiting and innovating, they rushed a Me Too product because it is very clear to me that they rushed out all of these Apple Intelligence features a year before they were supposed to. And so far, every feature has felt half-baked and not fully integrated and not well thought out. Not what we would use.
Writing tools are integrated. What? Like Genmoji is integrated right alongside your regular emojis. Writing tools are integrated right while you're typing. Like what? Like visual intelligence has its own freaking button. What?
Usually expect from Apple.
I feel like this is the kind of stuff where I feel like you just jump to the worst interpretation of what has happened. Would Apple potentially, if the market was a little less crazy for AI, would they have waited until iOS 19? I'm sure they would have. Yes, I agree. Are the features therefore entirely half-baked? No. The feature that would have been the most half-baked and is the one that has been most criticized for being half-baked, which is Siri, is the one that is getting the delay that you have been asking for.
And this rush
And in the meantime, you at least get the redesign, nicer interface, you get ChatGPT integration, you get a somewhat smarter LLM behind Siri, even though it's not entirely powered by it. you got some smaller stuff too.
market, this need to be one of the first has damaged their reputation.
No, I'm sorry, but this is wrong, because every company in the world right now is being damaged at least partially by AI. Apple is not faring in any unique situation here.
Consumers in the know, they think Apple is way behind on AI features. And for consumers out of the know, like the person in my example that bought an iPhone 16 expecting Apple Intelligence to just work, well, now they think that Siri is just still dumb and that Apple lied to them. And chances are they will never trust Siri to get an answer right in the future. And
This is this idea that people never try, like Siri is way more popular than this kind of reviewer makes you believe, because like the people still will use Siri. And Tipomaster, I do acknowledge what you have said, that it can get basic things wrong too, but that's because every LLM gets or every voice assistant gets shit wrong. Like it's not like Siri suddenly isn't capable of like still running all the tasks it was always advertised for.
And the more they use it, the more people use it, the more people don't know that these features are delayed, the more that is true for Apple. It creates this really bad cycle of distrust. Now, you know me, I am a fan of Apple products. This isn't some video of me saying you can't trust Apple or I'll never recommend their products ever again.
By the way, this is why I do react to Greg here, because he is still coming here from, and I'm not saying you need to be an Apple fan here to make the correct assumption, but I do think he's still coming from a perspective where he understands the product is more than Apple Intelligence being bolted onto it. While with Drew, I honestly think that he starts to believe that Apple is nothing but delayed Apple Intelligence features.
Again, failed products, software bugs, missing features, AI pins that launch at $700 and then the company gets sold to HP.
True. Public things that have happened that are completely killing things. By the way, I just read a big thread on Twitter by some tech journalist. I should have saved it, where he was bringing up that like battery life on his latest Galaxy Z Flip, so the last year's model, has almost halved in battery life. Has like weird performance issues, has bad cameras, and it's running on the latest One UI 6.1 version. And guess what? How much coverage that will get in comparison to one little bug that people eventually find in iOS? Maybe 1/1000 of the overall coverage.
And they disable the entire service. So the only thing that a $700 product you can do is now tell you the battery life.
In fact, it doesn't do anything.
That is unfortunately all too common in the tech world. And
yeah, but it's also been common throughout all of AI. As I kept bringing up also examples from Google, and I could also be bringing up examples from Microsoft, right? Public humiliation when it comes to an AI feature. Copilot, AI, delay. What was that feature called? Is slow compared to free Gen AI tools. Okay, Copilot. By the way, Copilot has gotten like an abysmal reception by Windows users. So the way they replaced Cortana with Copilot was completely rushed, and they have not taken it back. So just trying to tell you what the stage of AI is when it comes to integration across other products. But what was the feature called? It was like a backup feature. Do you guys remember? By the way, features being automatically turned on. That's something Apple did too, but they did it in a new version of iOS. With Windows, you literally got it like, it keeps turning itself on like that. Recall feature, right? Recall. So Microsoft AI, Copilot AI, Recall. So Recall is still somewhat there, but this has been a public disaster. It took them like months until they actually launched some final version of it, and I still don't see anyone actually using it positively. Even people who are like regularly like swimming their way through Microsoft's rectum, like they don't like they don't even bring up Recall as like a positive thing. And by the way, Copilot AI, when it comes to on-device stuff, right, it runs on the X Elite, but then it took months until it could run on any other. Wait, does Copilot AI run on Lunar Lake these days? Introducing Copilot Plus PCs. Surface for Business, Copilot Plus with Lunar Lake. Okay, so apparently like last month, Lunar Lake got support for AI. Before that, it was like half a year exclusive to Snapdragon X Elite Windows laptops, and for no good reason. We've had you have Windows laptops with dedicated GPUs with way more performance and often like large enough batteries to compensate for the inefficiency. I'm like, this is the state of AI. And yes, Apple has now shot themselves in the foot too with AI, but this is happening to everyone.
And for the most part, Apple does usually deliver on their promises. But
And they
I
will,
do have
I
some
believe
things
here.
I would like to see Apple do and some friendly advice.
Okay.
First of all,
Let's listen.
Apple, pull those Siri iPhone ads on your YouTube channel.
They have. So we can Apple pulls ad. What is the name of the actress? So that was the iPad Pro app. No, I mean a different app. Yeah, Bella Ramsey's ad. It has been pulled from their website. So this was the most egregious one. Desert67, Apple's foldable iPhone could bring back Touch ID. If so, I'm in. By the way, if Apple makes an iPhone Fold, like a booklet-like fold, the reason it is not likely to bring Touch ID, it's guaranteed. And the reason for that is, let's look at the Galaxy Fold design. There has to be a better perspective. Okay. So look, you would have like your Touch ID button somewhere here, right? You can click this button because it would be here, right? Even when the device is folded shut. And of course, is when it's unfolded. If this device had Face ID, it would mean you would have to have Face ID both in here and at least in one side here, right? This would also make the device pretty asymmetrical, unless Apple wanted to make a weird like Face ID system where one half is here, the camera is here, the 3D sensor is there. So if Apple makes a product with this form factor, it will basically guarantee to have a side-mounted fingerprint sensor, because the same is like, why does this device not have like an under-display ultrasonic fingerprint sensor? Well, the answer is simple, because now you would need to have two. You would need to have it in here and in here. So you would create extreme inefficiencies in device design, and you simply don't want it. So Touch ID in that regard would be best. Plus, it's also something that Apple has plenty of experience with these days, because guess what device also features a side-mounted fingerprint sensor? The iPad Air, the base iPad 2. So yeah, I absolutely believe if Touch ID is like a priority for you, it's not for me. But like if this is something you really care about, absolutely expect like Touch ID on an iPhone Fold.
Until the feature is ready to launch, and remove the advertising from your website. Furthermore, I think it would go.
Yeah, it is questionable though, like because it's like one image out of 9. Like the other Apple Intelligence feature is still launched. It's going to be expensive, 2K plus. Yeah, definitely. But it is going, like, don't forget that Apple is not launching it right now precisely because they're spending money and engineering expertise to remove the crease. They're working on new hinges. They're getting the latest and greatest display tech from Samsung that only will exist by like late 2026 officially in like a mass producible amount. They're working on a new generation of like ultra thin glass to put on top of it. Like, yeah, it is going to be more expensive. Plus, it is going to be a product that at its core, for many people, replaces a Pro Max iPhone that is a $1,200 or more purchase. And it replaces an iPad mini, which is a $500 purchase by itself. If you consider that it's most likely going to have capabilities that go beyond either one, that easily rounds it up to 2K in my opinion. And if it has anything truly crazy, then it becomes 2.2 or probably 2.5K.
a long way for Apple. And
By the way,
instead of
I've seen some
whispering the
people
delay
say,
to
oh, it's going to be 3.5K because Apple Vision Pro is 3.5K. And I'm like, when has that ever mattered? The way Apple prices different products has never impacted the way they target other products. Like Apple Vision Pro is $3,500, but the Mac Studio is $2,000 and $4,000. Apple Vision Pro is $3,500, but the 16-inch MacBook Pro starts at $2,500. Like whenever I see an analyst saying shit like, "Oh, it's gonna be 3,500 because Vision Pro is 3,500," I'm like, what exactly does one have to do with the other?
news agencies, just be upfront. Issue an apology, not to news agencies, but issue an apology to your consumers.
No, there's no reason. This is the problem. Whenever you make a big problem out of everything, you're asking a company to constantly not clarify. I expect Apple to come out and clarify like they did here. I expect Apple to delete egregious ads like they did that Bella Ramsey one. But like, what else do you want them to do? Like,
That this feature is taking longer than you are expecting.
that's exactly what is being said in Daring Fireball. How do you think Apple communicates with consumers? Do you expect them to go out and put them on the front page of apple.com?
Secondly, Apple, Siri as a product has failed too many times. It has become a meme at this point how often it fails. And now with this delay, Siri's last chance at redemption is over. I mean, even behind the scenes, there's talks about how Apple may need to scrap everything they've worked on with the new Siri.
That, by the way, is so wrong. This is like, I have no words for shit like this. This is stuff that is more about like the API works so Siri can integrate with third-party apps. If you believe that Apple is canceling all LLM work that they've been developing for Siri instead of improving it, you're a complete moron. Maybe they're choosing like one of multiple LLMs, a different one than they've had before. Like maybe, but like, do you think they're just scrapping every like AI data aggregation they've done thus far? How stupid would you have to be to believe this? Well, might they try creating a new internal team for something like this? Sure, it's one that specifically tries to target those features. Maybe they would want to remove those features from the broader like iOS team so a subset of people can focus just on this. Yes. Would it have to be entirely from scrap? No.
And start all over from the beginning. And you know what? Yes, you should do that. Forget Siri, forget its old code base, forget it.
There is no old code base. The problem is the old code base is the thing that is working the best on Siri. It's the features that work on device almost immediately. Have you noticed like when you ask like setting a timer or something like that, you don't even need to be connected to the internet, unlike with basically every other product? That's because of the old code base.
It's old servers, it's old features, scrap it, get rid of it. Start working on a new assistant with a new name. Apple Assistant has
new name. Yeah, I agree. AA, whatever. Call it Apple Assistant.
a nice ring to it, and introduce it as the next generation AI voice assistant.
Rebranding, I don't have a problem with that. Which, unironically, he's suggesting Apple does something that everybody else does, which is rebrand, right? Like the way that Microsoft switched from Cortana to Copilot, and we saw that it didn't actually change the people's perception of the integrated virtual assistant on Windows. We saw how keeping the same industry practices, like not respecting your users' privacy, means jack shit if you rebrand your product. We saw that with Recall. Like, people did not jump onto Recall because it was a newly branded feature of like whatever Windows Assistant or whatever Microsoft calls it. They still perceived it as the same bullshit that Microsoft has been trying to pull with Cortana over the years too.
You've solved all these problems, of course, because people will forget the bad user experience they had with the old Siri, and they will attribute only positive feelings towards this new assistant.
I agree with that.
Lastly, Apple, and the people watching this video, you can take this part with a grain of salt because you may think I have some bias here, but Apple, you need to stop surrounding yourself with so many yes men and yes women. Listen, lately I've been seeing a lot of people getting invited to Apple events or people that get Apple products early that just aren't that critical, or they sugarcoat a lot of things in the
Well, like, if anything, the Apple community broadly has been only shitting on Apple Intelligence. Marquez has been shitting on Apple Intelligence. Mr. Roos, the boss, has been shitting on Apple Intelligence. Like, what? People like iJustine? But iJustine has always been invited, even when she was way smaller as a content creator.
coverage. I've seen outlets that are fair and critical also excluded more and more from covering Apple products.
Bring me examples. Bring me actual examples. Don't give me vibes because I cannot find them. Like, which outlet has recently been removed from Apple after being critical? Like, and don't, like, some outlets get removed over time. Yes, because Apple invites new content creators. In an era of TikTok and stuff like that, Apple has to work with people who we would not take as seriously as like a Walt Mossberg we did in the past, or even like a Rene Ritchie these days, right? But Apple still has to work with them because that's how you reach a new audience. This is why I've been so critical of the criticism against Genmoji ads, right? Like, people have said like, oh, these ads are so bad. Do you remember Think Differently and stuff like that? But this is how you reach young people. A lot of iPhone users are like under the age of 16, 15, 14. Even I like Genmoji. I think this stuff is funny. Like, and I see like people saying, oh, Apple used to be a real, like, where was it? Like, iMac, yin, yang. Is that how you write it in English? Yeah, like people are basically like just supposing, saying, oh, look, you see how serious Apple's marketing used to be? We went from this to this. To this, right? But Apple has always had those more funny stuff. Apple has always tried to appeal to more younger people too. iPod, colorful ad, right? Like all this stuff. This is in the same vein. Like Apple used to make socks for iPod Nanos because it was funny. Right? This idea that Apple has always been this stick in the mud company is just entirely not true. iPod, sock, right? Like Apple did this for fun. Because why wouldn't they? Whom does this hurt? And yeah, you can even see like people even put this on other devices. I've even seen some not so family friendly things with those socks. Jesus Christ, people get crazy on the internet.
I think this is creating a sort of echo chamber in the Apple sphere. Listen, I've been covering Apple for a long time now, and while I'm sure I could not cover certain leaks or certain stories or cover Apple products in a way that gains Apple's approval more, I have always had just one responsibility: to be as honest as I can to my audience. And one thing about my channel is I have never been invited to an Apple event, and I have never received a product.
Yeah, but that has specifically to do with covering like some certain leaks, rumors. We've seen like people like Everything Apple Pro, for example, not being invited because he does like drop tests that are completely unscientific, and because he does stuff like, and we've seen like a jailbreak focused like coverage being really negatively seen by Apple. This has nothing to do with Apple friendliness. The iPhones actually performed pretty well in those drop tests by Everything Apple Pro usually. Those jailbreak tweaks got more people to the Apple community, arguably, but it went against Apple's core vision of iOS, of what iPhones are supposed to be, of how they're supposed to be used. So it's not really a question of Apple-friendly media. It's not like I'm entirely against what he is saying, but I do want some proof. Show me the outlet that got disinvited. Don't tell me, oh, Apple doesn't invite Linus Tech Tips. Yes, Apple has never invited Linus Tech Tips. It's not a new trend. And you know why? Because Linus Tech Tips, even when they have new Apple hardware, they do weird shit with it. And they potentially recommend people behave with that hardware in a way that Apple doesn't want people to do. It has nothing to do with friendliness. The product might even get a recommendation or a positive review, but if it's like advertising user behaviors that Apple does not like, Apple will not do that.
for free from Apple, despite what many of you think. And I would never.
No, but none of them get free Apple products either. They have to send them back. I understand it creates financial opportunities for them to get an Apple product early, but they do not get, like, because they can create videos with it, but they do not get to keep the actual product.
Alter what I say or make videos that I didn't want to make to gain not even Apple, but just any company's approval. Now listen, I don't have a big ego. In fact, I tend to think the reason I'm not invited to Apple events, or really a lot of technology events, is because I just think my videos are awful. They're shot bad, they're not interesting, and they aren't really that good.
Well, I'll see my videos in a similar vein, so at least on that one we agree.
I don't think Apple should be extending an invite to me because I just suck. And there are people that are probably way
you
more
wouldn't
deserving.
be doing what you're doing if you thought that was completely true. That's honest. That's dishonest humility. I don't think that what I do sucks, but I do believe that it's not high production quality enough to warrant attention from Apple. I do not think that our peak subscriber count is as relevant as if I were getting like 2,000 live viewers. Maybe at that point Apple could care. Or if I had like millions of views on TikToks, even with a relatively low production level. Like, nah, like Apple has criteria that are beyond, like, your videos are not that bad. They're in focus.
Than I am. That should just be invited to the events. But there's a lot of people that shouldn't be. There's a lot of people.
Bring them up. Bring them up. Show them. I have no problem criticizing other content creators
That don't give Apple the fair criticism they deserve. And there would be people out there that cover Apple that would be afraid to even make a video like this for asking Apple to do something that's a little bit uncomfortable, asking them to apologize. That is something that could rub someone the wrong way. It could make a awkward relationship with a company. So a lot of people wouldn't do that. A lot of people wouldn't call out Apple on their mistakes. But again, my loyalty isn't to Apple, even though I like Apple products. I got an Apple Watch on. It's one of my favorite products. I lost a lot of weight from this thing.
Same.
I'm phrasing this awfully. I got an iPhone, right? I love my iPhone. I work on the Mac. I would not be able to run this channel without my Mac. I like Apple products. They work really well. And out of all the options out there, I still think they're the best.
True.
Finally, to end this video, instead of criticism now, I would like to offer Apple some praise. Now stay with me here, because even though Apple got a ton wrong here, and they should apologize, there are some things they did right and things that are admirable. The modern world right now, it's very fast paced. It's constant information. It's a constant controversy machine. I fully believe a lot of companies without Apple's reputation would have made the mistake of not only announcing a feature like this before it was ready,
but actually
also launching a product or a software feature before it was ready, just to get it out there and then deal with the consequences later. And bank on the fact.
So he understood the point I was trying to make here too, which is like Apple has screwed up with the advertisement, but not with the actual launch, because they did delay it.
That most people would just forget that they ever released it in a bad state.
True.
Apple could have easily released this new version of Siri with a ton of bugs and something that got critical information wrong, and they didn't, even under all.
And don't forget, like, we're looking a lot of about AI right now, but don't forget that, like, what was it called? Android Wear. Like, for years, Google's like answer to watchOS was so bad that it took them running to Samsung and working backwards with Samsung's Tizen-based watch operating system to finally make a Wear OS version that's actually worth using. And now they're having problems rolling it out to, like, a new version to every product, because it was fundamentally designed with Samsung in mind, right? So we had something launch like arguably a decade almost too early, because when you remember, like, the first Android watches launched before the Apple Watch, they were god awful, right? And then they kept improving it, but the main focus they put on it, ironically, before all the AI craze, was Google Assistant. And Google Assistant was the thing that worked the best, but nothing else worked as smoothly there, to the point that now Google had to make their own smartwatch to actually get their head out of their ass to understand what people want from a smartwatch. I believe the Pixel Watch does not exist to sell you a Pixel Watch. I believe it exists almost like the way I see the upcoming iPhone 17 Air. It's like a reference product for internal development. But while I believe the iPhone 17 Air exists as like a reference product for an eventual iPhone Fold, I believe the the Pixel Watch exists just as a design baseline to get Wear OS right. And those, like tablet OS, do you remember Android Honeycomb, right? Where they were like praising just how much they optimized Android for a tablet-like form factor. And then half a decade later, we still got most third-party apps barely optimized for, and the reason for that also had to do with the weird aspect ratio. Like they made it a 16:10, which worked reasonably well for small tablets if you held them actually in portrait mode. But in landscape, this was almost like a cut-off laptop screen. It made no sense. There's a reason why Apple's largest laptop still sticks with a 4:3 aspect ratio. Yes, it's not the best for watching 21:9 movies, but it's the only one that actually works if you plan to switch it around. And those are design choices that Apple often got right in the very first product, or they amended them very, very quickly. And Google is still not getting fully right by this day.
All of this pressure, they still chose to delay the Siri, and that does deserve to be applauded.
Okay,
even though they probably should not have announced it until it was ready. At least
they should not have announced the new features, in my opinion. They should have said, we have a new Siri design, we have Type 2 Siri integrated, and Siri can give you recommendations on system-level features, almost like being integrated with the Tips app, I guess. That's what they should have advertised, not all the rest.
Have the understanding that, yes, they have to get features
Hey
like
Siri,
this right,
stop.
especially when it's dealing with users' personal information.
My
if they are going to
HomePod
launch
just
it at all. I
activated.
also don't think most people realize how much Apple is tying one arm behind their back with any of their AI efforts. The reason why Apple seems to be so far behind other companies is because they do not collect vast amounts of your personal data. Apple is one of the only companies out there in this AI space that still has a strong privacy stance. Nearly every other AI model or assistant is just scraping every single bit of data you feed it with no regard
and the broader internet as well, with zero respect for intellectual property protections. Like I don't want to leave YouTube for this, but like MKBHD AI video. Yeah, right. So he showed you this AI generated tech review video, and it had one-to-one the same pot plant, right, as he had. So it clearly was something where it just scrubbed all of YouTube, which, even though, by the way, maybe Google would have the right to do so. Oh, but it was an OpenAI. It was OpenAI's Sora model. So it clearly went through YouTube and scanned all the stuff it needed and got all the data it needed. So it wasn't even the company running YouTube getting all the data it could. So yeah, Apple's stance here is absolutely unique.
For your personal privacy. It actually makes you
Like,
wonder
do you think Grok respects what data it uses from Twitter or from the rest of the web from that matter? Do you think that Chinese models do respect the data that you put into their search engines like Alibaba and Baidu and now DeepSeek?
Apple is still even fighting this privacy fight, where it seems like so many people have just given up on it.
True.
If you talk to most people, they kind of don't care about privacy anymore. I see comments all the time.
Yeah, they're basically saying it's pointless because big tech daddy already has our data. Even though if you have an iPhone and you aren't like a prolific social media poster, it's objectively not true.
Claim Apple is stealing your data when they're not. So in a way, especially in a world where controversies pass in the blink of an eye and integrity really doesn't seem to matter anymore, Apple could just reverse their privacy stance tomorrow.
I
They could
agree
collect
with
all
that
the
take
data
entirely.
on everyone's iPhone, 1 billion of their users, and then train their AI models, and then take all that information and sell it to the highest bidder and make a ton of money. They could do that, and yet they don't. They're still fighting this human privacy fight, a fight the rest of us have kind of thrown in the towel.
I haven't.
And Apple is out there, still what I think is fighting a good fight.
I agree.
I wish more people realized that. But chances
Th-
are,
thanks.
most people clicked off
I
this
actually
video
brought it up quite a few times this video, and I'm very glad that this is almost like his closing point.
within the first minute, because who even has the attention span anymore to watch a video this long?
I do.
Especially without a lot of the
And
video
you.
editing tricks that
You guys are
attention,
amazing.
like constant sounds and clicks and camera angle changes and wacky British accents that some of us just aren't born.
He tried to do that. He tried to do it, actually. No, I don't even try to do British accents. They're just like I have a C2 Cambridge level certificate for like how good my English is, for proficiency, I guess. And despite being taught entirely in British English at school, I just refuse to adopt British English.
Messed up on that one too, so not even that good.
Wait,
Anyway.
but you are American, right? So why would you even have one?
Those are my thoughts. This video doesn't really matter. It's
No,
not like Apple's
I actually think that this video was pretty good by the end. All the criticism that I made towards his points, he recontextualized himself. So I probably should have watched this entire video prior, not the first 5 minutes.
take my advice. But hey, you watched it, so I guess that's cool.
Yeah.
If you did make it this far, thanks for hearing me out. I'm curious to actually hear your comments below. What do you guys think about this whole situation? What do you think about the current state of Apple intelligence? What do you think about the current state of Apple and technology in general, and our very angry disinformation state of social
Okay,
media?
he must be a Democrat. You don't criticize the angriness and the uninformed nature of the internet and actually still remain a Trump fan.
All the fakeness out. It's also fake.
It's really fake. And I brought up Twitter in the beginning. Like, Twitter is already a nightmare for all the Musk-related reasons that I keep bringing up, but it's so fake. Like, half of it is porn bots, half of it is bots that are begging Grok for their attention. The other half of those three halves is now Grok answering questions. It's like the people giving the most blatant as like Russian propaganda answers to everything with accounts that are clearly not real people. Like, Jesus, it's so, and I'm not even saying that it's solved if you move entirely like to the left political spectrum. I'm not saying that, but like clearly there is way to do like a more neutral platform without like making it run like half by fascism and half by bots.
Everything seems so fake nowadays, so I just want to be real with this one.
Thank you, Greg. You know what, bro?
we all
You
hate the
actually
fakers out
earned a
name
subscription
names,
from
but-
me. Yeah, this is the one thing that I actually dislike, the fact that you didn't name names. So going to Greg's Gadgets, because I hate it when you cannot even subscribe to a downloaded video even when your internet is on. By the way, I usually subscribe to people, but then I have like a separate YouTube account, but I don't like keeping it open on my Mac. So yeah, because that one is like fully private. This one has like YouTube Premium, so I try to keep it more secluded in a way. Like all the subscriptions I have here, I 100% stand behind it. Loner Box is the only great political live streamer in the world. Red Letter Media is hilarious. Mr. Mac Wright covers gaming on the Mac. Dame Tech, Renee Ritchie. I don't think all of these people need introductions. Extinct Zoo, great channel covering like prehistoric times, obviously dinosaurs and shit like that. I don't know if that's an L or a big I. J Anime, great channel doing like some anime parodies if you want to, or just some fun takes on it. So yeah. And Linefield are two Italian brothers doing like criticism of how Italian cuisine is treated throughout the world. So this account is 100% public in that regard, except for my email address. So I fully understand that in this world, it's hard to commit to any piece of information, to any stance, because everything is so in flux. So whatever I try to present on this channel, on this very public persona, in my opinion, a much more public persona than even my Twitter, I try to make this actually like reputable and something that I can stand behind long into the future. Even if in some small opinions might change in the future. I hope that my core way of thinking, analyzing things with logic, being analytical, being like nuanced, but not in like a, oh, I'm skeptical if the world is actually flat way. I hope that that way of thinking doesn't change. I hope that I just stay consistent, and in that consistency, sometimes change is actually the best thing you can do. So thank you, Greg, for this great video, actually leaving me in a good state of mind. We can briefly check if there are any news and rumors that we might have missed here by the end. So Airpods news, iOS 19, we've already covered that. And looking at Mac rumors, if there's anything we might hit here. Seems not. Great. This video turned out longer than I expected. I thought it might be 1 to 1.5 hours. It's close to 2 hours. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone who left comments. You guys are getting, I know it's not every video is the launch of a new product or a new processor, so I don't expect everyone to tune in, but you guys are getting livelier with every chat. You guys are leaving your opinions, so that's really great. Shout out for you to do all the YouTube jazz one last time, subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting. I'll probably be back tomorrow, though not quite as early as I used to in the last couple of streams, because I do expect tomorrow for the first reviews to hit, whether it's going to be a new iPad, the new base iPad, the iPad Air, the M4 MacBook Air, the Mac Studio. I assume we will probably get the iPads tomorrow and then the Macs on Tuesday, making the Tuesday a little bit more important. But still, expect it around the same time, maybe like rather than 4:30 p.m., like more 5 p.m. for me to come in, react to those reviews, analyze those together with you, see if any benchmarks are surprising or anything else like that, and just have a nice relaxed stream together. Thank you guys for all your support. I'll see you guys next time. As always, let me know what else you would like to see me cover. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.